Africa's newest female president has given herself a month to bring peace to the Central African Republic. But although Catherine Samba-Panza is supported by over 4,000 African Union and 1,600 French troops, her country is still deeply divided. Human rights agencies say the minority Muslim community is under attack like never before, often from the very people who are supposed to protect them.
The latest atrocity happened shortly after President Catherine Samba-Panza had addressed an army ceremony. The crowd accused a bystander of being a Muslim Seleka rebel. He was stripped and beaten to death by Central African Republic soldiers in full view of the international media. In a 4-day period last month, 43 Muslims were mutilated and burnt by Christian mobs, often in front of French or AU troops who stood by and did nothing. Human Rights Watch say the CAR's Muslim community risks being wiped from the map, but warns Seleka rebels, assisted by peacekeepers from Chad, are committing new atrocities against Christians in the north. President Samba-Panza's hope of bringing peace to her country within a month is looking an increasingly forlorn one.
Indeed, it does. Well, let's talk about the prospects for the Central African Republic now. With me in the studio are Catherine TEYA, who is the president of TEYA Europe, which raises awareness about the CAR and supports its diaspora living in Europe. Christian Mukosa is Amnesty International's Central Africa expert. And on the line is Lydie Boka, the director of Strategico, which analyses risk in developing countries. I'll start with you, Christian. You're recently back from the Central African Republic. A few days ago, we have the new president, promising to bring unity to the country, promising to protect Muslim communities, vulnerable Muslims in particular. And then this happens moments after she has left the stage. What on earth does that say about what's happening in the country, particularly the attitude of the soldiers who are supposed to protect vulnerable minorities?
Yeah, this shows how impunity reaches another level in that country. And as you said very well, the role of the soldiers or the police is to protect anyone. And there you have policemen to whom the newly elected president just finished to talk to about impunity, about dialogue, about how to live together, about the reform of the army.
About the unity, dignity
of
and
the
work,
country.
the motto of the country.
Yeah, and less than 10 minutes after, you have officers who, in front of the world, because media were there, photographers and everyone, and as we saw it on the medias, and they not only killed that person, only because he was suspected to be a Seleka, so members of the former army. But not only he was only a suspect, he was a human being.
Yes.
And they didn't only kill him, but also they lynched him and cut him, you know.
That's right.
So it went far from only killing someone, but it showed how the reign of impunity in that country. They did it because they knew in doing it, no one is going to do nothing to them.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, the president has said in the last few days, not all the Seleka militants, the mainly Muslim Seleka, are bandits, and not all the anti-Balaka militia, mainly Christian, are bandits either, but they must guard against being manipulated. But if you're an ordinary Muslim living in Bongi or somewhere else, and you are a member of the community, what are you going to take from that? You're going to think you're in danger, aren't you? No wonder people are leaving.
You are not going to think you are in danger because what people saw on the TVs or those who are supposed to protect the population, including the Muslim, were the one killing them. And this is, as I said, a very bad signal. And it's very important to remember that in December, it was the Selekas who were killing mostly Christians. And this time, after the Selekas fled and after the new president and the Seleka fled to Chad and other countries, is now the turn of mostly Christian and anti-Balakas to
But two wrongs don't make a right, and of course the Muslims, being only 15% or so of the population, are now far more vulnerable.
Sure, and this is the role of the new government to ensure that anyone in Central African Republic is protected by the army, the police, and the international forces present there.
One wonders what the diaspora, the Central African Republic diaspora living in Europe, like you, Catherine, make of this when you see these images, when you see a community that was living side by side, Christian and Muslim, now attacking each other and the minority being oppressed by the majority?
Yes, I think this is something that is very critical. The situation is just, we can't understand it, to be honest. The diaspora is really shocked, I would say, because we used to live in peace, both Christians and Muslims, and this never happened. So what has happened in the past year is something that nobody can truly understand. And even though the Muslims started the rebellion and they started attacking Christians, I don't think that it is now fair to actually do the opposite. And for Christians to now attack Muslims, this is something that shouldn't happen.
Well, two of the most senior religious leaders in the Central African Republic have been here to London, they've been to Paris, they've done a tour of European capitals, the Archbishop Monsignor Dieudonné Zapelenga and Imam Umar Okubine Layama. Great symbol of unity, but people aren't listening on the ground.
Yes, I think this is the problem. So there are a lot of people who are trying to show that we can live in peace, we can live together. We used to live together, so there's no reason why it can't continue.
And the Imam is even taking refuge at the Archbishop's home. He's living with him.
Yes, I think a lot of people are trying to help each other, so they don't really care where the people are coming from, whether they're Christians, Muslims. So a lot of people are trying to help their neighbors or their friends. So I think that this conflict maybe goes beyond everything that we can, understand. This is something we should maybe try to investigate further, and we should ask these people what actually motivates them, because truly nobody can understand what's going on.
Muslims are often called upon to feel shame by the actions of some of their minority when radicals do terrible, appalling things. But do you think Christians are feeling ashamed at what some of their anti-Balaka militia are doing to Muslim victims?
I think everyone can be ashamed about what is happening for the moment, because there's no reason why we should be violent, and there's no reason why we should kill other people, because there's no reason, no rationale behind this conflict. So this is something that cannot be promoted. This has to stop as soon as possible.
One wonders what the prospects for the country are. Let's talk to Lydie Boka, who is the Director of Strategico. Now, your job is to analyse risk when you look at countries around the world, particularly developing countries. When you look at the Central African Republic, what on earth do you see?
What I see is that the majority felt threatened by a minority, being Muslim, and people have gone crazy because of that, and they haven't realized that it's totally irrational. So it's going to continue for a while, but I think we're heading towards an improvement, at least in Bangui. It will take some time for the rest of the country because of the role of some neighboring countries, including Chad. But I think it will improve, yes.
In your experience, what does it take beyond the presence of, say, 4,000 or 5,000 African Union troops and 1,600 French troops, whose mandate may be renewed on the 26th of February, to bring peace to a situation like that, when there's suspicion, there's interreligious conflict, when there's an attempt at religious cleansing the Muslims from a country that they belong to?
It's very complicated because there is not a single enemy. It's not an army that they're fighting against. It's individuals with weapons, with daggers, with knives, and what have you, arrows. So it's really, really complicated. You cannot go to the front and fight an enemy. It's an individual. What we've been seeing is individual attacks. In addition to this, some countries that are members of the MISCA, the African Force, are playing games. This includes Chad. I think Human Rights Watch issued a report today or yesterday saying that Chad was helping Seleka in some of the cities like Boali.
Did they produce evidence of this?
Yes, they did. They did. Of course, Chad said it wasn't true, but there have been many, many reports to that extent, and I think they're credible. So you have states that are playing double games. Chad is going to play an important role. It has in the past, and it will continue in the future. There are other interests also, in vested interests at play.
The big question is now, what does the new president do about this? Because, of course, she says she wants to bring peace to her country within a month. But in a month's time, the vast majority of the Muslim population may have fled across the border to Chad, to Cameroon, to any country where they feel safe. Ethnic cleansing, is that the way to bring peace to her country?
No, you're absolutely right. I think she might have been overly optimistic, which is okay, but I think it would take a few more months at least. We saw that the French troops are going to extend their stay in the CAR. More forces will come from Europe. And as she said, it's not 4,000 or 5,000 troops that you need. You need much more, something like 10,000. But it's not going to be within a month. And coming back to the Muslim community, indeed, it's going to be such a chaotic situation. They're fleeing to Cameroon, to Chad, to other countries. And there is a risk that they might be stateless because they were born, they were Central African citizens, and now they have to run away, run for their life.
And it makes it all the more difficult to help them. I mean, Doctors Without Borders and Human Rights Watch have been saying it's getting increasingly difficult to bring aid to those people. And you've seen this on the ground for yourself, yeah. Christian. Isn't it, though, just... No, so it's not just about more troops. It's about what the troops do when they see atrocities, when they see a man pulled out of the crowd and accused of being a Muslim Seleka. It's for them to intervene and say, we're going to protect this man, not just stand by while he's chopped and burnt.
Yeah, I agree with you. The issue is not only in terms of numbers. Yes, it's true that the numbers still really needs to be improved. And according to the UN, people need at least 10,000 troops to make sure that they can effectively protect civilians in Bangui and outside Bangui. But again, the issue is not only numbers, because in some instances, it is very easy, for instance, to ensure that the anti-Balaka, who are not well armed, most of them actually, don't put checkpoints somewhere.
Because these guys are just roaming the streets with cutlasses and machetes.
So this is not a matter of numbers, but a matter of effectivity of the force on the ground, and to ensure that the force are effectively deployed where they are most needed. I mean, to make sure that the IDP sites, the site for displaced people inside Bangui, for instance, are well protected, to make sure that small towns like in Boali and in other places are also protected. So yes, number is very important, but the most important thing here for the troops on the ground, French, MISCA, the African Union troops, and others, what is important is to make sure that they effectively protect civilians, they effectively make sure that when people are under attack, they are effectively protected as well, and which is not the case at some instance.
It's not, is it? And I'm just wondering, Catherine, as a member of the diaspora, what you are trying to do to help those people on the ground? Are you mobilizing in any way with members of your CAR community here in the UK and across the European Union? What are you able to do?
I think since the conflict had started last year, a lot of people have decided to bring some help. So basically, a lot of people decided to gather and to collect goods, including food, also clothes, medicines, because a lot of people were hurt, you know, and we know the state of our hospitals. Most of the time that they cannot actually help you because they don't have the material and the equipment. So a lot of people decided to just collect things from everywhere in Europe, even in the United States of America actually. So everywhere where Central Africans are, action has been taken. And also we have provided a great moral support to all these people because we know a lot of them had to leave their families and leave their home and just go somewhere where they could be safe. So most of the time, they don't even know if they will be able to come back at any time. You know, some people have decided to leave just forever.
Yes.
But for the people who are there on the ground, what we do is basically we try to send them anything we can. But even sending something to the CR is very complicated, actually. Well, this is the point. So even, you know, organizations had difficulties providing aid to these people. So I'm not even sure that everything that's been done in Europe or everywhere else actually had an impact on the ground because it's very difficult to actually send things over there. Well, but as I said, I think the main thing we can do is to show them that we think about them, we follow the news every single day, and we try to reassure them that peace will come back at some point.
Well, people are thinking about this. It's coming toward the top of the agenda of many of our viewers. Lots of them have been getting in touch with us this week. Let's take a look at some of the views that have come in. We'll start off with this comment from Fatima Ahmed on Facebook. The people of the TEYA, especially Muslims, are in desperate need of a solution to the continued violence. Even women and children who have fled to the humanitarian camps have found themselves in danger. The country needs the rule of law and people need to fear justice. I pray the new president can bring some stability. We have another post from We the People of SA saying, as I understand it, most of these Muslims have entered the country from the north. As horrific as this backlash is, it is a retaliation to abuse that is seen over and over. Similar to the abuse that the Syrians, both Muslim and Christian, have experienced from the extremists entering their country from Saudi Arabia and Qatar. And finally this from Ibrahim Bala Yusuf. The images coming out of TEYA are truly horrific. They always refer to Muslims as terrorists while they are the real terrorists themselves. May Allah come to our aid. Amen. And if you would like to get in touch, here's how you can do it.
Keep your thoughts coming in. You can email us or text us. Go to our Facebook fan page. Or you can follow us on Twitter.
Let's pick up on one or two of those points. Lydie Boka on the line there, Director of Strategico. We had one person saying that there are some outsiders, foreigners, coming into Central African Republic from outside and causing problems. Do you think that is really a problem on the ground there, or is the fighting being done mainly between people who are indigenous, who are from the Central African Republic?
A little bit of both, because Seleka obviously received assistance from other countries. Some of Seleka members were based in the Gulf states and some were also in Sudan. So they probably got some help at some point in the very beginning, but not now. I think what's happening now is between individuals, civilians who have gone crazy from both sides, but the majority of Christians feeling threatened by a minority and who have gone crazy.
What about the role of some of the African countries where there is a large Muslim population? They seem to be fairly quiet, Chad notwithstanding. What more do you think they should be doing to try to put pressure on the Christian majority in the Central African Republic, headed by the president, to genuinely protect all the citizens of that country?
I think people should leave religion out. It could be something very dangerous for foreign countries, African countries with large Muslim populations to get involved, because it will become quickly a mess, honestly. I think everybody should leave the religious aspect out of it and call people to calm down from both sides.
But unfortunately, religion is now a key factor, isn't it? I mean, people often point to economic problems, injustice, disparity between rich and poor. But if I were walking down the street and people thought I was a Seleka, a Muslim militiaman, I would be in physical danger. I'd be in mortal danger. Whereas if I were in Bongi and people thought I was an anti-Balaka, I'd be fine. Religion is at the heart of what's now happening, isn't it?
I know, but I've seen this in other countries. At some point, there were threats in Côte d'Ivoire as well and other parts of Africa. I think in crisis countries like CAR, people are desperate after a long crisis and a violent crisis like this. They're desperate for to see an improvement in their lives. So if you give them a job and things start going back slowly to normal, like we're beginning to witness in Bangui, and then in the rest of the country, it will become normal again. As Catherine said, they used to live side by side not so long ago. And people will remember, at some point there were talks about an ethnic and religious divide in other parts of Africa, especially Côte d'Ivoire. And now the situation is improving, nobody's talking about it. It never quite goes away, but people haven't worked for almost a year in Sierra. Farmers haven't been to the fields, so they're looting, there's a bit of banditry, there's barbarian pensions, threats coming out. When there's chaos, people become like animals.
Well, this is the terrible thing, isn't it? And Christian, you've seen this for yourself on the ground. Let's look at solutions. What do you think that country needs, apart from obviously 10,000 troops? It needs much more than that.
Yeah, definitely. Not only in terms of dialogue, what Monsignor Zapalainga is doing with Imam Kobine, which is good, but we have to go beyond that, because what is happening is in the community, is not at the top. It's people who used to live together.
Yes.
Neighbors knew each other, who are killing each other. In December, it was Selekas, Muslim, who were killing Christians, saying that they were anti-Balaka.
Yeah.
Now, as I said before, it's a turn for Christians killing everyone suspect to be Selekas because they don't have protection, because they used to have protection of the Seleka officers who fled the country to Chad and other countries. So we should not stay in that cycle of violence.
Yes.
And one of the solutions for me is to make sure that those who are committing serious human rights violations, such as what you described after the talk of Catherine, the new president, should be punished, and publicly. People must see justice coming. People must see a kind of rebuild of a country, which is not yet
doing its job.
The judiciary, we have to reform the judiciary, the military sector, the security sector, etc. The country has to be rebuilt. The country has to be rebuilt because apart from the population and the territory, there's no really the essence of a country in Central African Republic now.
Isn't it? Yeah.
And we need to make sure that the international community, the United Nations, the African Union, neighboring countries contribute to that, because no one can replace Central Africans to be their own country. And no UN mission, no African Union mission can stay in a country for centuries. So they have to be in the country.
So it's down to you, Catherine, and the will of the people, isn't it, to rebuild?
But I think we also need help. These people need help because we need to remember that all these people are poor. They live in great poverty, and I think they've nothing to live on nowadays. They just don't know where to go, what to do. I think they're just lost. So someone needs to tell them what they need to do, and we need to show them the way so that we can bring back peace in this country, because there are a lot of problems that we need to address. These people, most of them, the people who have fled, they need to come back, but when they come back, they need to have something. When they come back, they need to have a house, because a lot of them have lost everything. Yeah. So we need to make sure that, first of all, the peace is brought back, but also we need to think further down the line and see what we'll do in the future, because we need to have a vision, we need to have a plan of the future. This is very important because, yes, we can bring back peace, but what will come next, we need to know.
And that's a key question. We'll leave it hanging there. We'll return to this, of course, at some point in the near future. That's it for today. Thanks to all those of you who sent in comments to us. Remember, if you'd like to get in touch, you can email us at the address on screen. You can text us, and you can also follow us on Twitter. Many thanks to our guests, Catherine TEYA, Christian Mukosa, and Lydie Boka. Join us next week for another edition of Africa Today. Till then, it's goodbye. And on behalf of the whole team, thanks again for watching.